you have to put your phone on, do that, please. And then also, if you didn't put your signed course syllabus up, do that. Second bin over. All right, so whenever I teach, I give you my notes. And then when we get to like an example, you can write in along with me, take notes on the sheets and keep it for like reviewing for a quiz or a test or something like that. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is some undefined terms in geometry that make or it kind of like geometry is built around these three terms. So the first one that we're going to talk about is a point. And a point is something that you should be pretty familiar with. In geometry, sometimes you'll see a dot. Sometimes it'll have a capital number by it. And if it does, that just means point T. So if you were to name that, you would just say point T. Now, as you get further along in geometry, what will happen is they don't always put a dot where you have a point. So they may, like this is a point, this is a point, and they may just put a letter by that. So I don't want you to think that they always have to have like a emphasized point to be, or dot for something to be a point. All of these would be points, okay? And you always use a capital letter. The next thing we're going to talk about is a line. And when you have a line, I think you all know that you have arrows on each end. Now, to name a line, what is going to happen? Regardless of how many points you have on this line, you name a line with two of the points, and they can be in any order. So if I was to name this, I could name it as line AC. I could say line CB, line CA, line BA, any of those would be fine. Another way that you can do it is you can do AC and then make a line above it. So that's another way to represent the same thing. Okay. So yeah, no matter how many points you have on that line, you just choose two of them and you can put them in any order. If I go here, we have a plane, and the plane might be the one that maybe you're not as used to, but a plane is really any flat surface. So in this room, I think of the plane or the floor as a plane, the ceiling as a plane, back wall, front wall, and so on. When you have a plane, in theory, it should keep going forever and ever in all directions, but in real life, it's not going to do that. When you draw a plane, you draw it as kind of like a crooked rectangle. Okay, so that determines a plane. And with a plane, again, there's a couple of different ways that you can name it. So one way is sometimes you will have like a script capital letter that kind of looks like cursive in a way in one of the corners of the plane. Okay, typically it's in this one or this one, but you would have one that is just there to name the plane. Another way to tell that it's there to name the plane is it won't have a dot by it. So like this K is there just to name the plane, whereas these three are points. Okay. So one way to name this is I can say plane R. Okay. Now, if you have a line that's in the plane, let's just say it's A, B, F, okay? And then let's say that we have a point that's in the plane also that's not on the line, and let's call that M, okay? Now here's the confusing thing about naming a plane. To name a plane, you can use any three letters, but they can't be on the same line. So I cannot name this plane ABF because they're all on the same line. The reason is if you have a straight line, there's infinitely many planes that you can kind of slice through that line. So a straight line never determines a plane. So because of that, you need at least one point that's not on the line. Okay, so I could name this as plane ABM. M would have to be in the name. Plane FBM, BAM. Okay, you can't use R because that's not a point, right? So I can name it as plane R, or I can name it as plane and any 3 points that are not on the same line. So plane ABM. Let's see. I thought of something that I have to go back here because I didn't mention something here. Another thing that's kind of nice with lines is sometimes either before the line or after the line, you will see like a script, small case letter, and that's another way to name that line. So this is line L, so you could name this as line L, okay? This one here, that M is there for the same reason, so we could say line M. Okay, the one thing that you can't do, if you noticed here with line AC, I put the AC with a line above it, and that's okay. But with that shortcut way, with that L, they don't allow us to do just the L with a line above it. That's not acceptable. So let's go back here. Now, one of the things we're going to do for this class is sometimes you're going to have notes that you can use on a test or quiz. And so I'm going to have you guys just take out a sheet of paper and label it chapter 1 notes. Keep it in your notebook. Don't tear it out. You don't want to lose it. And then what I'd like you to do is, I'll move this down in a second, but put these 4 definitions in your notes. And then when we take our quiz and when we take our test for this chapter, you can use that sheet on there. Okay. You guys, I'm terrible at technology. How do I turn my Apple Watch so it doesn't chime? Do I just do that bell thing? Not too far if I go like to here. Is that all right? All right. So the first thing that they talk about here is collinear points. So when you think of think of same. So collinear would be points on the same line. Okay. So if you look at this example here, Q, R, and S are all on the same line, so they would be said to be collinear points. Non-collinear would be points that are not on the same line. Okay, so if you look, I could draw A, B, C, the D up here. Okay, A, B, and C would be collinear because they're on the same line. But if I say D, D is not on the same line with any of these. So if I said, are points A, B, and D collinear? It's no. If D is in there, it's no. So if I said, are C, B, and D collinear? No. Okay. Then if you look at coplanar points are points that are on the same plane. So co means same. So they're points in the same plane. So as long as they're drawn in that plane, they would be coplanar points. This P, what is that there for? The plane name, yes, but A, B, and C would be said to be coplanar points. Usually if we're drawing a plane and we want to put a point that's not in the same plane, we would draw it like maybe up here. Okay, and what that would look like, you always have to think of it like three-dimensionally. The plane would be like the floor, and then it would be like if you were holding up a point right here. Okay, so A, B, and C would be on the floor, which is plane P, and then point D would be up here. Okay, so those are coplanar, A, B, and C. Non-coplanar is just points that are not in the same plane. So if you look here, E, F, and H are coplanar, but once we introduce G, then it's non-coplanar. So if I said, are points E, F, and G non-coplanar? That's true. If I said are E, F, and H non-coplanar, that's false. Does that make sense? Another thing I should say too, if I was naming this here, I could name that blue plane as plane EFH, HFE, any of those, okay? G isn't in that plane, so I can't name it with that. This one up here, I could also name as plane P. All right, so we are going to see how you guys understand this. So it says, use the figure to name each of the following. A line containing point W. So point W is right here. And a lot of these have many different answers. This is one of those, okay? So we want to name the line containing point W. Does anyone have one way we could do it? Yep. BY, okay, so we could say BY, and there's two ways you could do it. You could either put the line above it, or you could say line VY. Okay, either way is absolutely fine. Does anyone see another way I could do it? Line N. So with line N, would I do this? No, I can't put a line above that shortcut way, but I can say line N. Okay, so do you guys understand with these four letters, I can do any two in any order, and I can either do the line above it, or I could say line, maybe XY. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Now we have to name this plane. Does anyone have a way to name that plane? Yep. Plane P, perfect. Okay, that's the easiest way to do it. What's another way to name the plane? How many letters would we use? 3. And what would have to be true of those 3 letters? They have to be coplanar, yes. And they can't be on the same what? Line. So could I name it plane VWX? No, because they're on the same line. What letter would have to be in the name? C. Okay, so we can say plane BWZ. Okay, I could say YXZ, XBZ. C has to be in the name. Can I use P in these 3 letters? No, because P is not a point. Could I name this as plane WXT? No, that would be a plane, even though it's not drawn. Like if I had 2 points here and a point up here, I could slice a plane through that, but it wouldn't be the plane that's drawn. Okay. Then it says a line containing point T. So that's this line right here. Does anyone have a way that we can name that? Line TX, very good. We have another way. Line R, perfect. So this we could use and this. Now, just to explain what this is. Okay, so the blue plane would be like our floor. Then imagine that we have like a big piece of licorice on the floor. That would be our line. And then sometimes with a plane, you have a line that's kind of stabbing through it. And how you can tell that is they'd have those dashed points here. So they're actually with that line TX, they're stabbing through the plane and it's coming out the bottom. Okay. So this one says a plane containing T and Z. So this is what this one too, you might look at it and go, well, there's not a plane. But what you have to realize is through any 3 points that are not on the same line, you can draw a plane. So you could think of like, maybe pick C and Z are on the floor. T is up here. And through any 3 points not on the same line, you can slice a plane. So a plane containing points T and Z would be plane T and Z, and then you'd need one other point that's not on line TZ. So you could say TZV, TZW, TZX. Okay. All right, so let's look down here. This is asking us, so we learned 3 undefined terms today. One was the point, one was a line, and one was a plane. And this is asking us, which one do these represent? So if you think of stripes on a sweater, that's representing lines, okay? This one here says the corner where your driveway meets the street. So let's say you have just a straight driveway and your street is pretty, it doesn't have to be, but let's just assume that. So it's the point where your driveway meets the street, this point right here. So it would be a point. And then what if outside, like a patio door, you had a patio that was 10 by 12? What would we call that? A plane. If we look here, another thing that we'll talk about today is intersect, and you guys probably understand that word. But here, if you, they'll ask you like, what is the intersection of these 2 lines? Now, when you have 2 lines, do they have to intersect? No, they could be parallel, okay? But if they do intersect, they'll just ask you where they intersect and it would be in a point, okay? Now, this is a little bit harder to visualize, but this is 2 planes intersecting. And when they intersect in a line, okay? I'd never make you draw that because I would struggle drawing that, but that's 2 planes intersecting. And a way to think of this is like if you thought of this whole front wall as a plane and it would go up into, whose room is it up? Brad Bauer, maybe. And then if you think of the ceiling as going into Mr. Check's room, those 2 planes intersect in this line that goes straight across. So anytime you have 2 planes that intersect, it's going to intersect in a straight line. So here they're having us draw points. So it says lines A, B, and C, D intersect at E for A, which is the point -2, 4. So -2, 4, do you guys remember plotting points? You go left or right first and then up or down. So -2, 4 would be left 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to label that A. B is 0, -2. So we don't go left or right. And for the -2, we just go down 2, and that is point B. Then we have C, which is -3, 0. So you'd start at your origin and you'd go back to the left 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it doesn't go up or down because of that 0. D is 3. Oh, and I should label that C. D is 3, 3. So I'm going to go right 3, up 3, put a point, and that is point D. Okay. Now, they want us to draw line AB. So between A and B, we're just going to sketch a line there. Okay. And they want us to draw line CD. So we're going to sketch a line here. Okay. Now, if you go back and read up here, it says line AB and line CD intersect at point E. Okay, so point E would be this point right here. Right? Now it says point F is coplanar with these points. What does coplanar mean? On the same plane, right? But point F is not collinear with this line or this line. Not collinear with, do you get that? That would mean it's not on either of those lines. So where we want to put point F is in a point on this plane that's not on one of these lines. And there's many choices, right? So you could just put point F either in like this region, this region, this region, or this region. You just randomly put point F. So the big deal about these when you get to the test and quiz is labeling. Kids forget to label the points or the lines, so make sure you do that. Now, this says line QR intersects plane T at point S. So when you have a line and a plane, they either the line can lie in the plane or on the plane, which would be that it's right on there, okay? Or what can happen is your line can cut through the plane and then it touches just in that one point where it crosses through. When it says that the line intersects the plane at just one point, what that means is we have our plane, okay? And we can call it plane T. So somewhere in a corner, put a T without a dot. And it says line QR intersects that at point S. So I'm going to have a line. Now, to show that it goes through the plane, you emphasize where it touches the plane. Then you do like dashed lines, and then you show it coming out the bottom. These dashed lines just mean that you can't see it at that point. So that's how we show that it's going through. And it says line QR. So what that means is somewhere on this line, I need to have 2 points. They could be right together. They could be anywhere on here. Okay. So that's line QR intersects plane T at point S. So this is point S. So again, you really have to concentrate on labeling everything. Okay, so this one says that J is the point -4, 2. So we start at the origin, we go -4 up 2. So here's my J. K is 3, 2. So I'm going to go over 3, up 1, 2. That is my K. All right. And what this says is that J, K, and L are collinear. What does collinear mean again? Same line. So what that means is L needs to be somewhere on the same line as JK. So if I drew JK, wouldn't L be somewhere else on this line? But it would be anywhere on that line that I wanted to put it. So L would be somewhere on that line. So again, when you're talking about a plane and a line, it can either stab through or it can lie in or on the plane. So this one says line P lies in plane N. So I'm going to draw a plane and it's plane N. So you're going to do like a cursive capital N in one of the corners. And what they tell us here is that line P lies in the plane. That would be like if it's laying right on the carpet. So then you draw it without those dashed lines at all. So this line P, if I label it line P, is right in plane N. Now, if you read this again, it says line P lies in plane N and line P contains point L. So where would I put point L? Somewhere on the line. So somewhere on this line, I'm going to put a point L. So line P lies in the plane and it contains point L. Here it says line N intersects plane R at a single point. So I'm going to draw my crooked plane and it's plane R. Okay. And it says line N intersects the plane at a single point. So would that line go through the plane or would it lie on the plane? It would go through. So I would draw a line. I'd emphasize where it hits. I'd do dashed lines and I'd show it coming out the bottom. Okay, so that's line N. So somewhere on that line, I can do that little cursive and I can do it up here or down there. Intersects plane R at a single point. Now here, it doesn't say what point it is, so you don't have to label it, but you could. If you wanted to name that point P or something, you could do that. But it doesn't specify, so you don't have to. Now, another question, and I know this is on your first quiz, a lot of kids forget this, so really try to remember this. If you're drawing 3 planes that don't intersect, would you understand that would be like the floor, the ceiling, and then the ceiling of the floor of the room above us? Those would never intersect, right? How you draw that on paper is you would draw 3 crooked rectangles, one kind of just above the other, but not touching at all. Okay. And this does not specify the names of the planes, so we don't have to label at all. What kids do on the test is they draw 3 planes horizontally, and in geometry, we assume if 2 planes are right next to each other like that, that they intersect. I don't want to go into that too much, but when we draw them like this vertically, we assume that they're not touching it. Okay. So now we can go to our last page. Okay, so again, one of the things about geometry is at times you have to view things 3-dimensionally when they're drawn 2-dimensionally. So when you look at this, I'll just kind of talk you through this diagram. We have our plane X. This is a pentagon base of a, do you know what that figure is called if it comes to a point? A pyramid, okay? So this is a pentagonal pyramid. So a pentagonal pyramid is going to have the bottom. And then how many triangles do you think would be going around if it has 5 sides? 5 triangles, right? So this is the tricky thing. If they ask you how many planes are here, the bottom of the pentagonal pyramid and this plane are the same. this pentagon is lying like if it was on the floor and the pentagon base are the same. We don't count it twice, okay? So that bottom plane is 1, and it's asking us how many planes are there, and then there'd be the 5 triangles, so 1 plus 5 is 6. Is that okay? Everybody get that? Now, this line, hopefully you can see there's dashes here. So this line is stabbing through the plane, okay? This says name 3 points that are collinear. What does collinear mean again? Same line. Do you see a line? And it can be a segment, okay? It doesn't have to keep going in both directions. Do you see a line or a line segment that has 3 points on it? Yeah. J, K, and D. Okay, J, K, and D are collinear. Then it says name the intersection of plane H, D, G. When you guys first look at that, you might be like, there's not a plane H, D, G. But you got to remember that any 3 points that are not on the same line determine a plane. So this HDG is considered a plane. Basically in geometry, any flat surface is a plane. So that's an example of a plane that is not drawn as a perfect rectangle just because it's triangular in shape. Okay, so they want us to name the intersection of that plane with plane X, which is on the bottom. So if you think of that, where do you think those two intersect? Think of it 3-dimensionally, that pyramid is sitting on the plane. Where would they touch? Line HG would be where the bottom plane, where the bottom plane and this plane intersect. 2 planes always intersect in a line, so it's line HG. And you might say, well, that doesn't look like a line because it doesn't have arrows. So we're not supposed to know how to write a line segment at this point. So we're just going to say it line HG or HG with a line above it. And it says, at what point do line LM and line EF intersect? So line LM is this line, which has the dashes here, comes out the bottom. That's line LM. And line EF is this line right here. Okay. Now in geometry, lines do keep going forever and ever. So you have to consider this line really is like this, if we call it a line. But think about this line is cutting through the plane, so it only touches that plane in point L. It doesn't touch the plane where it's dashed. So would this line, which actually I probably shouldn't have extended it of the plane, but do you think this line and this line would intersect? They look like they do, right? But it's dashed here. So is that line on top of the plane or is it behind the plane? It's behind. Okay. So this line is like stabbing through the plane and it's right here is line L. And then you have another line that's like right here. This line going through is never going to touch this line. So at what point it would be none. And if it asks you to explain, don't worry about that. Then it says, does line LM lie in plane HGF? So plane HGF is this bottom plane. Does this line lie in the plane? Yeah. Oh, sophomores. Yes, Go ahead, sophomore. I don't know, but do you guys want to take a picture? Grab your phones and take a picture of the assignment before you go. This is the assignment. And then just, so you know, really quick, when you do your assignment, make sure you put your name and then somewhere put the page number as well as which questions I assigned on the top. Okay. You guys are all sophomores. All right, so let's go back up here. We're almost done. So does line LM lie in this plane? No. Because that line cuts through the plane, it's not in the plane. So this right here is actually a triangular prism. It has triangles on the ends. How many rectangles does it have going around? 3. So how many total planes would that be? 5. Then it says, name 3 points that are collinear. So do you see a line? And like I said, sometimes they don't put a dot by a plane. So do you see 3 points on the same line? A, H, B. So they don't always put that point there, but you can tell that it is. Then it says our points A, H, J, and D whole plane. Okay. If you guys look at just A, H, and D, can you tell that those 3 lie on this plane right here? Okay. J, H, and A lie on the same plane, but is D in this plane? No, so they're not. Then it says our points B, D, and F coplanar. B is here, D is here, F is here. Are those coplanar? Yeah. They're in a triangular plane, so they are. And like I said, don't worry about explaining. So again, this is your assignment. I always have my book up here and you're welcome to come up here and check the answers as you're working. If there's something you don't finish today, the last 5 minutes, you can grab your phone and take a picture of my key. I don't mind that as long as you're using it for the right reasons. And then again, when you put your names on your papers, make sure you put the page number and all the questions I assigned. Okay. And then I just have one more thing to explain. Okay. I want to explain to you what this is. This is 2 planes. This is number 21. It's 2 planes. So like our floor and ceiling. And then we have a line that cuts through the ceiling, goes through our room and cuts through the floor. So it'd be if you stab something through our ceiling and floor. And what the question asks us is, does line N intersect line Q? Now in the drawing, they don't, right? But think of lines as continuing. Would they eventually intersect? Yes. Okay. And then here, no, number 35 and 37 are challenging. If you don't understand them, come tomorrow, ask, or if you get to it today, ask. But those are challenging and we'll go over them tomorrow if you have questions. Sound good? All right. The assignment, yes, sorry about that. What?
My grandpa called to take a picture.
Well, you'll need it this hour. So I want you to work on it now. You can grab it from your locker. Yes. Make sure you bring your book every day, guys. And if you have a calculator, bring that. Today, we don't need a calculator, but some days you will. Yeah, just sign out on that chair.